Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to give you my best books of 2023. So if you watched my worst books of 2023 video, which I will leave linked up above, I spoke about how 2023 really wasn't doing much for me. In terms of reading, I had a lot of average books, a lot of 2.5s and 3s and 3.5s, some 4 stars, and very, very few 5 stars. I don't know what it was in 2023. The new releases were not hitting, and I was just struggling to find books that I was really enjoying. So these are the 5 that made the cut. And then some of the other 5-star books that I read during the year were rereads. I read the A Darker Shade of Magic series. That was a lot of time spent reading 5-star books for sure, but they were rereads. So let's get into the ones that made the cut, the ones that passed, and I want to get straight into this because I know that this is going to be a shorter video and I want you to get to the store and buy these 5-star books right away. So coming in the number 5 spot, we have Be Not Afraid of Love. This is Lessons on Fear, Intimacy, and Connection by Mimi Xu. This blew my mind. This is Mimi Xu's essay collection that dives into exactly what the title says, a discussion on different types of love, romantic love, family love, platonic love, self-love, that sort of thing. Mimi Xu is a victim of domestic violence, and the book is really a discussion on how they found themselves appreciating the love that they see around them. And not to get into too many details, but this is something that I've experienced in my life. And I myself, much like Mimi Xu, have become closed off to other forms of love. And while reading this book, I was completely read to filth. I was going through this, highlighting, and I'm like, damn, this is me. If I could have ever read a book that I think would have came from my mind onto the page, like as if I wrote it myself, it would be this book. And not only was this very personable to me, or very relatable in a sense, Mimi Xu also writes so beautifully for the topic that is at hand and for the type of book that this is. And it's such a mindful memory. So much time was spent contemplating by Mimi Xu, and the discussions that they are having in this book really make you think and understand that they were also having these thoughts and they've really worked through them over the years. And so I just think that this was really amazing. I would highly recommend it. I think it's very thoughtful and thought-provoking. And if you want to read a book on love and compassion and stuff like that, I would highly recommend this. I think it was worth all the time I spent reading it. Next, we have a book that's made some people's worst books of the year and some people's most disappointing, and I can't comprehend why, but it's Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. This was one of the books that I think surprised me the most this year. I was really excited to read it, so I knew I was going to love it, but I didn't realize how much I would love R.F. Kuang's dive into literary suspense. I really enjoyed that. Yellow Face follows a woman named Juniper Song who takes advantage of the untimely death of one of her friends in order to steal a manuscript written about historical China and publish it as her own under a pseudonym and ambiguous photos that make it seem as though she is an Asian author when she is not. She's very white. An unsuccessful author at that, and so she's therefore taking advantage of the literary prowess that her more talented friend had. So if you don't know this about me, I love R.F. Kuang. I've pretty much given everything that she's ever written 5 stars, I think. And what I'm really appreciating about R.F. Kuang is her dives into different genres of books and how she's not afraid to take these leaps and chances. And this is definitely very different from something that she's written before and very self-inserty as well, which I really appreciated that aspect. I don't know if everybody appreciated that aspect, but I did. It was very meta because you can see where R.F. Kuang is putting in her experiences, the different aspects of the publishing industry into this book and what she's probably dealt with or seen. And so I think that was really interesting. The ending, I think, is a very controversial one, and that might be why people didn't really enjoy it as much as I did, but it was extremely satirical, very comedic. And I think R.F. Kuang was trying to tackle this not fun, but exaggerated form of a thriller novel, which I appreciated as well. And I just think that this was really artful. I think R.F. Kuang had a fun time with this, and you can definitely tell that through the book, while at the same time tackling these important subjects and discussing the publishing industry, discussing the booktube or book community in general. Just, it was so interesting, and it's not that long. I was about to say it's short, but I don't think it's that short. Yeah, it's 300 pages, so I definitely think she packed so much into this book. It's worth the read. I would definitely pick it up if you haven't yet. I just think R.F. Kuang is a master at writing, and so it couldn't not be on my top books of the year. Another book that will be, no surprise if you know me at all, made it to my best books of the year, and that is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is the first book in a companion series, but it's not really a companion series. It's just kind of like a continuation, but it's starting like a new, how do I say this? Like a new story. The characters from the first series are still very much present in this book, which I think could have been a disappointing factor for a lot of people if you didn't know that going in, or you don't really appreciate the first characters. So I could see that as being something to be disappointed by. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's why this appeared on a lot of people's disappointing books, but it worked for me. I really love the A Dark Shade of Magic series. As I mentioned in the introduction, I reread them this year. It was like the third or fourth time I've reread those books. It's my favorite series in the universe. It follows a character named Kel, and Kel is an Antari magician who has the power to move between different Londons. In this world, the Londons are sort of like parallel to one another. So you have Grey London, very much like our London. Magic is non-existent. It doesn't exist. People don't believe in it. Very much a Victorian London of our like history. Then you have Red London. That is where Kel is from. That is where magic is thriving. Magic sort of like runs the city. Think of it as like a typical like fantasy world. Then you have White London. This is the closest to Black London. So I'll explain what Black London is first. It's basically desolate. There's nothing there. Magic completely took over it and to the core burnt the world essentially. And then you have White London in between Red and Black, and they've been sort of left to deal with the aftermath of what happened to Black London. And so their magic is very much corrupt and infiltrating their society in a more like negative way than it would in the Red London, as they are further away from Black London. So that is like the gist of the first series. This is the second series, and it follows two new characters, and they are sort of changing what we understand about the world in their own way, which I think was really like one of the pluses for this book. It expands the world so much. We're really touching upon different areas of London's and the different parts of the worlds. Like there are worlds outside of London. So I would be really interested to see if this series touches upon moving to other parts of the different worlds, countries. And like I said, it expands so much of the magic system. In the first series, we really only understood what threads of power were from one character. And now in this book, we're introduced to another character who is able to touch upon these threads, which I think was so interesting because this character in particular is using it in a way that we didn't see previously. And obviously the other character that appears in White London is using the events that happened in the first series in a sort of religious manner and utilizing the magic in White London through this religious ideology. And I think that that's really interesting. I am a slut for criticisms of religion in books, religious ideologies, religious symbols and stuff like that. I think that it's so interesting and you could do so much with that. I have never been more excited to read the next series. I can't understand why people don't like it. I just love the addition of these new characters, and I love that we still have the old characters except that they're like older and hotter. Everything I didn't realize I wanted from this series, V.E. Schwab provided. Thank you, Queen. Loved it. Could not have expected anything better. I can't wait to reread this when the next book in this series comes out. I can't wait to read that series. I loved it, and it definitely needed a place on this list. I never felt as much joy as I did when I was reading this, except when I read the next series on this list. This is something that absolutely took my breath away this year. It is the Locked Tomb series, starting with Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir and Harrow the Ninth. So I went into the series. I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't think I would become obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with the series. So the first book, Gideon and the Ninth, introduces this world. Bear with me because Tamsin Muir is absolutely unhinged and nothing in this series makes sense, okay? It follows this world where there are 9 tombs. In these tombs, there are different societies of peoples, necromancers, who are tasked with roles in this world that have something to do with their necromantic power. Gideon the Ninth and Harrow the Ninth come from the 9th tomb, obviously, and their main role is to protect and house a being that is powerful enough to destroy the like god of this world. And so that's their only role. Gideon and Harrow have their own relationship with this locked away being. And one day Harrow is invited to go to the first planet in order to take part in these trials that will turn the victors into these beings called lictors. And the lictors are working for God, essentially. That's like the most basic way I can explain such a convoluted plot, but I absolutely love this series so much. I just finished Nona the Ninth this month, so you know that I'm like in the high of this series so much. But I'll basically just review my thoughts on Gideon and Harrow like as a collective book. This book is completely confusing. I have never researched more reading a book than I did reading these two books. I watched videos, I was reading Reddit threads, I was on the Locked Tomb Wikipedia because I needed to just understand exactly what was happening. And the point is that you don't. You're just along for the ride until everything starts to make sense. Gideon as a main character in the first book was phenomenal. She is such a funny character and I loved being in her head. Harrow is such an emo teenager basically, so I really enjoyed being in her head as well. Just each individual voice of each book is so fascinating, and what Tamsin Muir does with the voice of a character, the perspective of the character, the way that the story is written is all a part of this convoluted, unhinged plot. All the characters in the two books are complex. They all really have their own roles. There's no character in there that feels like a throwaway because they're all important, and you find out in Nona as well how important these like backseat characters are. The writing is so intelligent and clever, and you feel like you're reading a box within a box within a box. There's so much developed in these series, and also Tamsin Muir throws in jokes and memes and cultural references that are just so funny and fit the story so well, but feel so like interesting to catch. I'm so impressed with the series. I had so much fun reading everything that I've read so far. This definitely had to be my second favorite like book series of the year, just because I was so shocked by it and so enthralled and so invested in these characters. I can't wait for Alecto the Ninth to come out. It needs to come out soon. I need to continue. After this, I can't wait to see what Tamsin Muir puts out next. And then finally, after all that, you might be wondering like, what could possibly be your best book of the year? Because you mentioned two series that you absolutely adore, two series that I would even argue like define me as a person. But one book I read this year completely enthralled me and took me away, and that was And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. This is the best book I read this year, and it was a complete surprise for me. I think a lot of these books, now that I'm realizing it, made this list because they just surprised me and impressed me so much. This is essentially a horror book that looks at motherhood and mental health, particularly following a young Indigenous woman named Alice who thinks that she has the perfect life. She's married to her charming husband Steve, who is a white academic who is nothing but supportive and kind to her and her newborn baby. Strange things start to happen in the months following the birth of their child, and that's all I'm going to say because it's not very long and it is such a fast read. It completely enthralled me. I could not put this book down. I think I finished it in like 2 days. It was such an interesting and amazing experience to read this book. The best like visual I can give you of how it feels to read this book is the ending of the Barbie movie, where all the clips of the different cast members' mothers are like passing through the screen, and we understand like the importance of motherhood and womanhood, and it definitely made me sob just as much. This novel is way more than just a horror book. I think the horror aspects in this book are pretty palatable, so if you are like more scared of horror, I don't think it's that scary. This book doesn't solely use the horror to harp on a woman's mental health or harp on postpartum struggles. It definitely discusses that, but it's not overly used in a way to just frighten readers. It ties them together with more interesting discussions on wrongful imprisonment, mistreatment, and the genocide of Indigenous peoples, drug addiction, feminism, and a lot, like so much is discussed in this book. It's wild. Amongst Alice's story of her postpartum struggles, there is this side story of a sky woman and how Alicia Elliott weaves the story of the Sky Woman and creation into womanhood, brilliantly tied this book together. Elliott's writing is also so unbelievably smart and quick, and I never wanted to put this book down, like I mentioned, so when I did, I was constantly thinking about it and I needed to pick it up like right away. The way that this book enthralled me, the discussions that it's having, the brilliant writing and the cleverness of this, I couldn't put this in any other position but first place for my best books of 2023. So I highly recommend and urge you to pick this up. It was brilliant. And that's it. Those were my best books of 2023. Please let me know down below what your best book of 2023 was, and did you read any of these? Did they make your list or your worst list? Let me know down below. But if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. I tell you every time, but it does wonders for my channel. It makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things. So I will see you next time with a new video. Okay, bye.